Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of the Road to FIDE Master series. This is the episode number 87 in which I will cover the analysis of the round number 5 from Prague Open. Let's see it. In the round number 5 I got paired with an adult player from Georgia, rated 2050 with black pieces. From what I've seen thus far during that specific tournament, he was a good player with some understanding of the game. On top of that, he was faithful to his opening repertoire, he loved his specifics and choices, and I knew that it might be a tough battle, not only chess-wise specifically, but psychologically wise too, because if you remember from the yesterday's analysis, I lost a game with white pieces that perhaps should have been avoided, right? So I wanted to bounce back. Let's see how did the game go. After e4, if you remember, in the round number 1 I chose e5, in the round number 3 I chose c5. In here I got back to the e5 move because I had one specific idea in mind. I knew that my opponent is very much in love with his Italian bishop on c4. I cannot tell you now why did I get such a feeling, but sometimes you just get it. If you are preparing against the opponent, you are looking through the variations here and there, and all of a sudden it like struck you that, oh, he likes that, or wow, the results in here are great, or whoa, he is like enjoying himself in this type of structure position, and so on, so on. So I kind of knew that once I will go into the e4, e5 scenario, bishop c4 would happen. To my surprise, it did not happen immediately. It happened only after knight c3. I chose little d6 move, which is not, you may say, most ambitious one. And if I would be met with either d4 or bishop b5, I would be actually entering the Philidor's defense, in which we know that black is simply a little bit worse, and that's that. But I knew, I felt it, I expected it, that my opponent will play indeed bishop c4 that he loves. And in here I've prepared a very niche idea that I am kind of proud of, because I chose knight a5. So I am disregarding the development of all the other light pieces. I am focusing only on my knight, with the idea of exchanging this bishop of the opponent that he so much loves, right? I hope that makes sense to you. And the idea itself is kind of interesting one. So if you are looking for some unorthodox lines in those type of scenarios, you may try to interrogate it yourself, let's say, what happens afterwards, because the point is that indeed white should avoid the exchange and go back to e2, and this is what happened in the game. Bishop b5 check does not change that much because I can play c6, kicking it away, and once it moves back I play c5, same as happened in the game after bishop e2 immediately and c5 immediately. My idea was to kick away the bishop. Afterwards already my opponent closed it down, and once I got that, I knew that I have some space in the center, and that's a good thing. The other good thing is this bishop. The bad things are 3 developed pieces with the hopes of getting the fourth one shortly, 1 developed piece on the edge of the board, nothing else is really moved. So I really needed to now do the work of developing, but obviously it's easy to me. Bishop e7, knight d5, interesting choice. One funny thing I would like to add to you guys, that one of the most important and crucial ideas in here that I expected my opponent to not know was b4-1. Trying to immediately attack this kind of a strange setup of mine, claiming that once I will take the pawn on b4, knight d5 happens then, perhaps sooner than later taking back the pawn, or if white does not want to do it, after knight f6, let's say, he can also take on f6, and after this just claim a3 here, and some kind of a gambit from white, unexpected, practically speaking interesting, very funny, very interesting positions arises. So I was up for a fight, let's say, because I wanted to win, and once the position got into, let's say, calmer variation, I was also fine. So bishop e7 it is, knight d5, knight f6, castle, and my opponent as of now I believe has an interesting choice to make, because he can either try to take there, or just leave it as it is, and if so, he can play some more moves, right? Please note that bishop g5 ideas when having this bishop on e7 most likely will backfire. It's not really that great of a pin because I can take on d5 after ed5 takes, I am a piece up. After this, that I am a piece up. So as white, you need to be careful, guys. Okay, but going back to the game, this is the option, and also two others are c3 with the preparation of either d4 or b4 or both, or c4. And my opponent chose this move exactly, and it was, I believe, kind of a virtually draw offer because, you know, I allowed this type of structure to happen. It's very dry, very blocked, very drawish, and my opponent, you know, took his chance to kind of claim that he wants to block everything and play very equal game before, because if you think about it, everything is the very same, similarly placed. The only difference are the knights, and his one is obviously a little bit better than mine, right? So he should have like plus 0.05 advantage or something. Anyway, once he did not decide to play c3, which I believe is the most critical, the most practically desired and so on, I knew that after c4 I should try to mess things up a little bit, and usually you do that by messing up the pawn structure. So I took on d5 now, thinking that if he plays like this, I will play f5. If he plays like this, I will play b5. He chose the latter option, so I pushed. And in here I felt, okay, we have some unusual structure game, let's play. In here I knew that once more my opponent is allowed to play a move, and finally, on like, I guess, third chance, he chose the best move that I was expecting him to choose, which is b4. Very good, very interesting, very direct idea, not allowing me to play b4 myself and claim the 3 against 2 advantage on the queen side for the later stage of the game, not allowing me to close down this bishop behind the walls of white pawns. Opponent reacted very well, played b4, trying to undermine my, let's say, advantage of this on this side of the board, and undermine especially my c5 pawn, because once I take, d4 square is weakened, and the desire of white was not only to play b4 in isolation, but to prepare d4 in the future, because with d4 he would be opening up the pawn structure in the center, he would be opening up the outpost for his pieces in the center, he would be finally opening up this bishop to perhaps looking at this pawn, right? So all makes sense. On top of that, I didn't really have a choice of not to take, because if I would like to jump back, a4 was very powerful move that I expected to happen, because if we imagine the position, let's say without the pawns, I mean, you know, this variation could have happened in plenty different scenarios, but this was the fastest one to really exchange all the pieces. The biggest idea, the biggest question is this pawn a weakness of mine or a strength of mine? And I would argue that as of now and for the future, it is more of a weakness, unfortunately, due to the fact that so many white pieces are on this side of the board, or either will at least look at this side of the board, so the pressure will be there, and I perhaps will be unable to push the pawn further than a5, because in here it has some support. On a4 it might have some support, but a3, a2, a1 will never happen. Therefore, already on the those squares it would be a big weakness, and at this point it's kind of a weakness. So all in all, I expected this variation, this position to be worse to me, and I evaluated it correctly, so I took on before. And in here, what I like about the position is that white have 3 choices of how to take back the pawn, either with the bishop or with the rook or with the queen, let's say. The most intuitive way of doing the things in here would be to play with the bishop, because why would you hire the biggest killer in the game of a queen itself to take some lonely pawn, right? The same applies to the rook, but apparently bishop d2, at least in my eyes, is the worst of all, and computer will not even emulate it, will not agree with me that much, because for him the choices, the differences are marginal. For me, human-wise, with the eyes on the future, it's a big difference actually. And my opponent in here spent like 20 minutes nearly on thinking about how to take back the pawn, and he played bishop d2 with the idea of bishop takes b4, which I found inaccurate. Why? Why am I so harsh even though the computer does not agree with me? As I've said a few minutes ago, the idea of b4 was to allow d4 in the future. So thinking about the d4 breakthrough as of now, it's not yet possible. It's a little bit premature because I can jump to c4, block the diagonal, claim that my knight is kind of okay, maybe allow my pawn to survive and whatnot. So d4 yet is not protected, but it is a desire of white. So how can he try to make it work? Perhaps with some bishop e3, right? Move, it would help a lot. Maybe rook will help too, kind of in a strange way, but if it works, hey, it works, right? And so if we compare the variations and ideas, if he would have played this, this, and that, within 3 moves, he would took my pawn and prepare d4 not only with the bishop, but also the rook. And the queen is always there and the knight was always there. So quite a lot of support. If he chooses to play like this and take and then go back and go here, it's 4 moves and only the bishop is there without the rook, and there is one more move for me to stop it, to play against it, right? So it's maybe a small difference, but for me it was a big one, and I am still proud of myself that I evaluated this move as a much better one, even though engine does not reflect it. So bishop d2 it is. Knowing that this is very important stuff, I played bishop g4, and in general this game as a whole, starting from the b4 moment, I'm showing already to plenty of my students as a great perfect example of how each side can construct its ideas. So first of all, b4 was very instructive idea of the opponent, then rook b1 would be a very, very resourceful execution of the idea, let's say, even if white does not choose to play like it, later on d4 would be as deadly. So now it's my goal as black to try to play against it, and I need to perform exact set of exchanges to stop it from happening. So very, very instructive game as a whole, I believe, because in here I chose bishop g3, which I like a lot, love a lot, since I would be attempting the exchange of the knight that was indeed supporting the d4 breakthrough. My opponent chose on b4 because that is what he has planned. I took on f3 immediately. I was kind of hoping that my opponent would be so willing to draw against me that he would choose bishop a5 variation, because after this, and that, it's kind of tempting to him to go into it because indeed he's on the verge of winning. But after bishop a5 would appear, I would take the bishop, and then he could have claimed that, well, opposite colored bishops means a draw, so maybe a draw, right? But apparently I am on the verge of winning myself as black because I have 2 versus 1 advantage on the queen side. I have a move, so I can take over the control over the c5 c file immediately. I have the pressure towards the a2 pawn, making the rook moves a little bit harder to perform for white. And on top of that, this is not an equal, let's say, situation. This bishop is hidden behind the wall of white pawns and has no clear good outpost. This bishop is amazing one. I can go here, here, and there. No problems in the meantime with this maneuver, and then the bishop looks into the direction of the king, into the direction of promotion, and so on. So I would be really, really in power in here. Therefore my opponent did not want it for sure. He just took back on the free as he was supposed to do. Now I went back with knight to b7. It's not like I did not want this exchange, because I have just showed you that I want it, but I wanted to reroute my knight to c5 square, at the same time kicking away the bishop. And in here, funnily enough, my opponent played rook c1, which might be considered as a yet another mistake, maybe not mistake because it would be too harsh, but inaccuracy, which you don't say that often about a move that develops the rook onto the one and only open file in the position. but we will get to it in a second. Why is it not the best? I believe the rook b1 to be a better move, because once and if I would like to perform this a5 move and the bishop escapes, this pawn requires my, let's say, reaction. I need to protect it. If I chose to do this, bishop g4 with a tempo. If I do this, bishop e3 with a tempo. Queen e8 does not look that promising. b4 kind of allows opponent to try to undermine the pawn chain immediately as of now. So practically speaking, after rook b1, I would have to either choose my idea, change my idea, and then choose some other one, right? Or something. Rook c1, yes, it goes onto the open file, but so what? First of all. Second of all, after I kick away the bishop and it goes to d2 with the idea that we talked about from the very beginning, after knight c5 hitting the pawn, even provoking bishop e3 to happen, I now have a move that guarantees me quite a nice one and very long-term one advantage connected to the topic of how to perform exchanges. Because if you think about it, this bishop is terrible one. All other pieces are maybe better, maybe worse, but you know. This bishop will become great after d4. After d4, this bishop also will be fine. This knight would be great one if not for d4, if it would not happen. So all in all, I knew that since my bishop is not that great here either, I need to play, not bishop h4, bishop g5. Because, and then now we see why this move is a mistake, I am pinning the bishop to the rook. This is the whole point why the rook move was a mistake, because now bishop c5 is not possible, I will take the rook, right? If that's not possible, can the bishop avoid this exchange? No. Is it the exchange that I want, or does my opponent want? I want it. So with that, I knew that I should be taking over. My opponent attempted d4 anyway, but because of this lost tempos and the idea of mine to exchange the dark squared bishops, it's not that deadly anymore. I took on d4, once more making use of the pin my opponent therefore had to take back with the queen. I took on e3, queen e3 happened, rook e8, took over the control over the e5 square. I have d6 pawn that solidifies the square, solidifies the knight. My knight is amazingly placed on c5, attacking the weakness that will be a chronic weakness. This bishop is basically hidden behind the weaknesses, therefore it will have a job mostly to just protect them. So it's a very healthy, very good instructional example of having a position of good knight versus bad bishop. It's not like white is lost yet, but practically speaking, it's quite hard for him to make progress, to make his life better. Therefore, practically speaking, we'll get to it in a second, he had one and only chance and attempt to really keep fighting, but my opponent chose a, as I call it, slow death, meaning that he was playing correct moves, but without any, danger creating and so on. So he was just step by step getting closer and closer to the losing situation, because I was just step by step putting more and more pressure, if that makes sense. So I will just play out the moves, how did the game continue for 5 more moves, and I will go back to this position once more. So after rook f2 e1 of his, I decided that it would be useful of me to bring the other rook to the e file, so I did just that. So rook a7, g3, rook a2 e7, bishop g2, f5, putting as much pressure as I can onto the pawn. He had to play g3, bishop g2 to allow himself to play f3, but after takes, rook e5, I solidified everything that I wanted. Outposts for both my pieces, weakness that will be hit all the time with the triple stack incoming. So all in all, I have a great position, and this should be just a matter of when rather than if I will win the game. But going back a little bit, looking at this position, I hope that when I was talking about it, about the practical chances for the opponent, you may have seen too that it would be a kind of interesting attempt of the opponent to sack the rook for the knight. Because we are taught the value of the pieces, that this is 3 points, this is 3 points, this is 5 points, and sometimes we forget that in the dynamic play, in the game of chess, those values are different. And in here we can tell that this knight is for sure was valued at more points, more, let's say, evaluation than the bishop. It's clear. Whether it's as good as one of the opponent's rooks, it's debatable. Maybe not as powerful, but still a good one. So maybe white should have gone for the change of this dynamic. Sacrifice the knight, because not only he's getting a pawn for the exchange, which in itself is nice, but also he does no longer have this bad bishop. Because if you think about it, now white has one passer on d file, connected one to the e pawn, maybe to the f pawn, so the pawn chain is incoming basically. Then the bishop will be supportive, will be helping the pawns. Maybe it will allow one pawn to be protected and the other one to be pushed, or the other way around, and so on. So all of a sudden the dynamic changes. I am lacking the outposts, I am lacking the control over the center. My pieces are heavy, are great, but not yet active. And who knows how would the game continue if the pawns would be pushed further up the board. In here, however, rook c5 already was not in the best, let's say, move order. Computer suggests that after rook e1, rook a7, this would be already a little bit better moment. And this one after g3 and rook a to e7 would be the best moment for white. Apparently, it's around equality, objectively. And practically, position gets quite hard for me to continue. I need to think about this move, I need to think about this move, I need to think about this move. All of a sudden, I am the one to answer all the questions. So who knows how would the game finish? I saw this, maybe not all of this, because I didn't want to calculate, I didn't want to look stressed, if you know what I mean, about it at all, so that my opponent would not be tempted more to play that sacrifice. But also, since my opponent during the game showed me that he would be fine with a draw, especially with this c4 move in here, I felt like it would be too much to expect of him to really go for it. So a little bit, let's say, stressed out about it, but not so much as I would normally be against other players. I played those moves rather fast and confident, and indeed rook takes c5 did not happen, and indeed I got to the dream world in here. But it just shows you that sometimes practical decisions are even objectively the best, because objectively it was around equality, so it was the best you can get as white. In here, I mean, material is equal, but so what? Practically you are basically losing. We may say it already. Like chess.com engine and Lichess engine show around -1.5 valuation. I was listening to some podcasts of Fabiano Caruana. He has some supercomputer. I guess at his supercomputer evaluation would be closer to -3 or something, because it's just a tremendous advantage for me long term. So yeah, how did the game continue? For me, it's very easy. For white, it's not. He chose rook f1. One more interesting choice to either think on your own or think about giving to your students. Do you take on e4 immediately or not? Because even though objectively, engine-wise, it's the best way to go, practically I felt, yes, I can take the pawn, but do I have to rush with it? It's not going nowhere, right? So let's just play one more preparing move, queen e7. After queen d4, I chose, okay, let's play one more preparing move b4, let my pawns to be close to each other. And only after rook c2, I decided, okay, I made my queen's positioning better, I made my pawn position better, now I will take. So I took, he took back, I took, he played queen f2, with the hopes of winning the game, because after rook e2 I am lost, since after rook takes, queen f7. I believe you saw this motif plenty of times if you do the puzzle rush on chess.com. I believe in each puzzle rush there is at least like 3 examples of such checkmate. So once more, not rushing things too much, I just played simply h6, giving some breathing space for my king. In here already, it's tough for my opponent to make a move. And as you can tell, 5 moves were played without this aggressive note. After 5 more moves, what moves are yet to make? Not not that easy. He chose rook c6 as a, I don't know, maybe some try of active play, but I chose rook e2, taking over the second rank, and after queen f4, I've calculated that after rook f8, I should be winning an endgame, the rook endgame, and already as of now my opponent resigned. Took him by surprise, to be honest, a little bit. If I were him, I would perhaps play out at least 5 more moves, but it was his style. I saw that once he knew that he got outplayed, he was resigning, also in some other games during this tournament. And I actually like it. Like, it's one of the ways, I guess, to show the respect to. I am not yet able to show so much respect and credit to the opponents. I would like to test them out a little bit more. But yeah, my opponent resigned in the eyes of the variation as follows. If he would take, that he kind of has to do, takes, thanks to the fact that I made my rook much more active on the second rank and I pushed the pawns when I had the time to do it. Those two pawns connected with the rooks will be just unstoppable. So yes, he could have tried to play out few more moves, but like what for really, right? The result is known. So yeah, at this moment, as I've said, after rook f8 my opponent resigned, and I was very, very proud of the game because I knew that my opening choice was not, let's say, making the game equal on the spot because it was niche and not objectively the best, but practically it was an amazing choice against this specific opponent. I knew what he could have done in order to put more pressure onto me, and he did not do it. Later on, I knew exactly that rook b1 was better than bishop d2. I knew exactly what exchanges to perform and what to not perform, right? Then I knew that he had this possibility of rook takes c5 that he did not take. So basically the game from my side was mostly flawless, and I loved this response to the fact that, I just lost a game, the previous one. And usually in the past, I would not have such a strong response after a lost game. Most likely what would have happened, what could have happened is that I would be not in my best shape, but this game was kind of the statement that I'm here to play and win. And also I got so, let's say, confident because if you think about it, I got 4 out of 4 wins against lower rated opponents around 2000 rating mark, that I texted my coach that now finally, after years and years of being stuck around 2200 ELO rating, I got to experience, I got to acknowledge the fact that I am indeed better than those 2000s, let's say, and I know why and where and when. So it was kind of nice feeling and confidence boost to really be able to tell why am I better than those guys, because as I've said, I saw the best lines for me, I saw the best lines for him, and I had total control of the game, even though having black pieces. So yeah, amazing stuff. I was really back to my full confidence and high hopes for the second part of the tournament. And with that, leaving you with the good mood too, I guess I will leave you here. Thank you all very much for watching this game. If you enjoyed it as much as I did, and if you are willing to include this game, if you are a coach, into your analysis with the students, if you are a student to analyze it on your own, I hope that I earned a like, so I will highly appreciate it. And if not, anyway, you can give me a like in the hopes of getting more analysis like it. And as of this one, thank you very much all for watching once more. We'll see each other tomorrow during the analysis of the next round. As of this one, that's all. Thank you for the third time, and bye bye.